Hey guys, welcome to today's class. Have fun.
Hello everyone. Our lesson today is going to be on a non-African poem where we'll be looking into the themes and we do an analysis of the poem. And the poem for today is going to be Crossing the Bar by Alfred Tennyson. So I'll just quickly give you a run through of what we'll be doing or what you'll be learning today in this lesson. The first thing is to look into the poem. I literally have to read out the poem and then give you like a brief summary of the poem. Then we go on to talk about the poet's background. We move on quickly to the summary of the poem. And after that, then we'll go on to explanation and analysis of each stanzas because the poem contains 4 stanzas. So we'll look into the explanation and analysis of each stanza of the poem. And after that, we look into the themes. So basically, what are the themes that are in this poem? We look into them, discuss them, and then we talk about the poetic devices in this poem. So let's move on to the business of the day. So now I'm going to be reading out the poem by Alfred Tennyson, which goes thus: Sunset and evening star, and one clear call for me, and may there be no morning of the bar when I put out to sea. But such a tide as moving seems asleep, too full for sound and form, when that which drew from out of the boundless deep turns again home. Twilight and evening bell, and after that the dark, and may there be no sadness of farewell when I embark. For though from out our bourne of time and place, the flood may bear me far, I hope to see my pilot face to face when I have crossed the bar. So, what do you really think the poet is trying to say from what I just read? What comes to your mind? Essentially, from everything I've read, it becomes clear that the poet is trying to say, or probably let's say is trying to prepare his mind for a journey which he is going to be embarking on. So he apparently has heard a call. So someone has called out for him, or he's gotten his call from somebody, and he wishes to embark on a journey which might probably be out of this space and time. And on his journey, he hopes that whenever he leaves for his journey, there will be no sadness when he embarks on his journey. But however, before we try to start dissecting each stanza or perhaps each line in this poem, I'll quickly look into the poet's background. So who is Alfred Tennyson? Where is he from? Why did he write Crossing the Bar? Okay, so Alfred Tennyson was a British poet born August 6, 1809, and he died on the 6th of October, 1892. So he wrote the poem shortly before his death in 1889 to elaborate on life after death. So basically what the poet is trying to talk about is death is not the end of life. So he was trying to elaborate on the fact that there is life after death, and once people die, it just doesn't end. That's not the end of everything. When people die, there's still a lot more that goes on after death takes place. So he was the poet laureate of Great Britain and Ireland during much of the Queen Victoria's reign, and he remains one of the most popular British poets. So shortly before his death in 1892, Tennyson wrote the poem Crossing the Bar to meditate on death, which he likens, from what we've read in the poem, to gently crossing the sandbar between a coastal area and wider sea or ocean. So from what I read for you in the poem, it becomes quite obvious that he was meditating on death and talking about And I would say he likened the whole process or the whole idea of death to him crossing the bar. So it's just like when you have to cross a particular obstacle, or it's like you've gotten to a point where you need to cross to the other side, So he was saying that that comes with you having to move from one space and time to the other. But which space and time is he talking about? We'll find out later. So now let's move to the summary of the poem. So I already said that the poem contains 4 stanzas, and each stanza tries to talk about or tries to point out something about his journey, while other ones were more keen on talking about what death is and how the process goes on. So very quickly, I am going to give you a summary of the first stanza. So from my analysis of the first stanza, we can actually say that the poet is only trying to say, I noticed the sunset and evening star in the sky, and hear a sound calling for me loud and clear. I hope that the sandbar will not be disturbed when I go out to sea. So what do you think from what comes to your mind? What can you think of when after reading something like this? So I'll just from my own analysis of the first stanza, it is obvious that the poet observes the day slowly going to an end, with him saying, I noticed the sunset and evening stars in the sky. So when you notice the sunset, I mean, what can we characterize? What can we liken with sunset and evening star? So basically, the beginning of the day starts with the sunrise, and it goes through that till a particular time comes when the sun suddenly vanishes, and then the moon and star will fill the sky. So him stating that out in the first stanza suggests that he's talking about the end of the day, or probably, if we look more into this, he's talking about the end of something, because ideally the sunset and evening star basically talk about end of the day. And if we liken it to what or the idea behind this poem, it could suggest the end of his life, or like end of an existence, or end of like a living being. But we won't delve into that now. That will be later during the analysis. So continuously, he further on and said, he hears a voice, rather, calling out for him. So he stated that, and one clear call for me. So at the time he was observing, looking at the sunset slowly rolling and the evening stars come by, he heard a call for him. And he went further to say, and may there be no mourning of the bow when I put out to sea. So basically, I believe he says, or he was trying to say, in the course of him answering that call, which he heard, he hopes that the world would not be too disturbed when he finally answers the call. So he's trying to say, I am observing the night coming. I'm observing the end of the day, probably the end of his life. And at this point, he's beginning to hear a call. Someone is calling out for him. And he intends to answer the call, because from what he says in and may there be no mourning of the bow when I put out to sea. So when he said, when I put out to sea, it shows that he intends to answer that call. And he hopes that when he finally answers the call, there will be no mourning. I mean, there will be no sadness or grief filled in the world when he finally answers the call. I won't talk much more on the deeper meaning of this one. So we'll quickly move on to the summary of the second stanza. So this one, from my analysis, I also believe he was saying, from the analysis, I believe he's saying, Instead, I want to be carried out on a tide moving so slowly it seems almost asleep, and which is too swollen to make a sound or create a wash. That's what I want when I return to the home of the death of the great unknown. So the second stanza, we saw him talking about, but such a tide as moving seems asleep, too fall for sound and form, which drew you boundless deep, time has come, and something like that. So basically, that is just giving you like a deeper look into his plans to cross the bar. First stanza has already established the fact that he plans to do something. He's planning to go on a journey. The second stanza gives us more overview of what kind of journey he intends to look for and how deep or how far he intends to go in the journey, So in continuation from the first stanza, while crossing the bar between a coastal sea and the wider sea or ocean, the poet wants to go through the process slowly with ease and less panic. So he doesn't want to panic while going through the process. That's why he said, but such a tide as moving seems asleep. So he feels that he wants the process to go rather slowly, without panic and with much ease. And he believes crossing the bar with ease and less fear will help him reach his ultimate destination. So there's like a deeper meaning to this one, but I won't talk about this now because we'd have to go more into the explanation and analysis later on, where I dissect and give you more explanation into what he actually meant in this. But for now, we just leave this at this. So now we quickly move on to the third stanza, which I've also said, I believe it was saying, twilight comes with the evening bell, which will be followed by darkness. There don't be any sad goodbye when I go. So can you see, like, this is more like a trend. So he's trying to pass a message. First stanza, it tells us, I've heard a call and I intend to go or answer the call, or probably I just intend to go on a journey. Second stanza, it went further to say, I intend to go on this journey more peacefully. It's like a seamless journey. I do not want to be to be uneasy or fear about what is going to happen to me. I just want it to come easily. Like, he wants the whole process to come naturally. So now the third stanza is elaborating more that by the time he's gone, he doesn't wish for any sad goodbyes when he finally goes. So I don't want, he's implying that, or implies he doesn't want people to be sad or like grief when he finally answers the call. So we move on to the last stanza, which is, even though I'll be going far from this time and place, floating on the tide of death, I hope to meet God, who has been like my pilot in this journey when I've made it across the bar. Okay, can you see that this last stanza kind of like how do I say this? Kind of like wraps everything around. So what do I mean by this? We already know what he said in the first stanza, second stanza, third stanza, but now it's telling us that it's letting us know that this journey is going to, it's going to be a journey where he's going to move from so he's moving to a different time and place. Where he's going, we don't know at this point, but he's letting us know that he's moving from from this dimension to a different dimension, and he hopes to meet his pilot, who we believe to be God, who has been his pilot, somebody who has guided him all through the journey. So can you see that with this last stanza, it just clarifies that this is really talking about God, or this is really talking about death, and he elaborates more on the Christian afterlife. So if you go back to probably when you were in church, or like any time where maybe Sunday school or whatever, when they have to talk to you about how there's life after death, after you die, there's a different life, you get to meet God, and then you get to be judged based on whatever you've done on earth, So if you remember, or you try to recollect whatever you've learned from your Sunday school, from your Bible, or, from Christian class and all of that, if you try to link it to what this first stanza or the last stanza is talking about, you will see that there is indeed a link, There is indeed something he's trying to tell us about death, afterlife, God, Christianity, and all. So with that being explained, we move on to the explanation and analysis of stanza 1. So I would have to again read out the first stanza and then analyze each word for you. The first stanza goes thus: sunset and evening star, and one clear call for me, and may there be no morning of the bar when I put out to sea. So this poem starts with a metaphor focusing on sunset and evening star to imply that something is going to an end. In my summary of the first stanza, I pointed out that him using sunset and evening star, ideally sunset and evening star illustrates the end of the day, So him using sunset and evening star trying to tell us that something is going to an end, like the end is near, or like he himself is nearing the end. Do you get? So this can be interpreted to mean that the poet's life is slowly nearing the end, as the poem reveals later on. So now, as much as it feels like we might be, or I might be speculating about death, later on the poem elaborates, from what I've read at the beginning, elaborates more and more to make us understand that this really is him talking about death, and more likely his own death, like the near end of his life. So in continuation of the analysis, in line 2, the poet says he hears a clear call. The poet believes that his time has come through the call. So he believes that, and what clear call for me, he believes that he's heard a call which suggests or tells him or notifies him that it's almost time. You're nearing the end. So basically, and the poem later on reveals that this call is probably from God. So now analysis of the line 3 and 4, which says, may there be no mourning of the bar when I put out to sea. It just implies that the poet hopes that there won't be much pain, grief, or sadness among his friends, family, and the world at large when he finally dies by answering the call. So overall, one can say from this stanza that the poet is preparing for his death through using some of the words like the sunset, clear call, no morning of the bar, when I put out to sea, and the likes, So all these key words he's using suggests that he plans to go on a journey. And him saying, may there be no morning of the bar when I finally put to sleep, or when I finally put out to sea, saying that when it finally goes, he's hoping that the world won't be too sad. And that's that on the explanation analysis of stanza 1. Quickly moving on to explanation analysis of stanza 2. I'll again read out the second stanza, which is, but such a tide as moving sleeps asleep, too full for sound and foam, when that which drew from out of the boundless deep turns again home. The poet believes that death is a slow passage of time, and he believes there's life after death. So naturally, from this first line, with him using seems asleep, shows that he believes that, or the whole idea of death or dying is more like you going on a long sleep, just like when you sleep in the night, but then this is a different kind of sleep where you sleep for long, and that suggests to you that he believes or he wants to think that death should happen naturally. You don't have to be scared or fear that you're going to die, because whether you are scared or not is a natural is a natural phenomenon which is going to happen anyways. So he wants from his own mind, is calming himself to believe that death is more like sleeping. It's more like a slow passage of time. It happens so naturally that you don't even get to know, like you don't get to feel it, just let it happen. And from line 3 and 4 we can understand that when it says that when that which ray from out of the boundless deep turns again home, it's saying that this transition, or like the journey, or like death now, is more like a transition from earth to heaven, which takes him to his eternal home. When he says in line 4, that turns again home. So basically this correlates with the Christian belief of passing on to their home in heaven. In church or during Christian class, they tell you, you literally hear people say earth is not our home, our final home is heaven. So this it kind of like really correlates with what Alfred Tennyson is trying to say here. More on the like the overall explanation of the stanza 2, or like the overall analysis of the stanza 2, which is in line with his Christian belief, says that he believes death to be a natural thing. That's more like you falling into a deep sleep, and he believes dying is just a process of taking him to his home in heaven. So basically that is what stanza 2 is all about. So we now move on to stanza 3, which I'll read out again, which is twilight and evening bell, and after that the dark, and may there be no sadness or farewell when I embark. Generally, looking at this just lets you know that he plans to go on a journey. His death is near. He knows, or he feels that he's going to die soon, and he knows that. So him saying, and after that the dark, just kind of let you know that it's like a death-related journey, and he's saying again in line 3 and 4, and may there be no, in line, I think in stanza, was it in stanza? Okay, yeah, in stanza 1, he said that he didn't make it quite clear. He only said that may there be no mourning of the bar when I put out to sea. So at that point, it wasn't too clear. You can't be too sure what he's talking about, But now in stanza 3, him saying, and may there be no sadness or farewell when I embark, shows you or tells you really that, okay, this person is talking about death. Because it's saying, with the use of farewell, farewell is saying, or sadness is saying that when he eventually dies, is hoping that people are not too sad. So basically, generally, stanza 3 elaborates more on his passing and his expectation from people. When he finally dies, he hopes that there won't be too much sadness or grief or pain left in the heart of those he leaves behind when he finally dies. And so we move on to the explanation and analysis of stanza 4. Again, I'll have to read it out. For though from out our burn of time and place, the flood may bear me far, I hope to see my pilot face to face when I've crossed the bar. This naturally tells you that he's planning to move from, or he's planning to change dimensions. He's planning to move from a particular dimension to the other. So there's going to be a change in space and time. So with him saying from out our burn of time and place shows that he's planning to move from earth to heaven. And him saying, I hope to see my pilot face to face. So his pilot is that person that has helped him cross the bar, that has guided him through his journey of crossing the bar, and he's saying he's hoping to finally meet his pilot face to face when he crosses the bar. So if you just relate it to what Christianity preaches, just shows you that, they tell you when you finally die, or when death comes, and when people move to heaven, they get to see God, So him saying, I hope to see my pilot, which in this case is God, face to face when he crosses the bar, just makes you understand that he really plans to die and hopes to meet God, who has helped him all through the journey when he dies. And that is that on the explanation and analysis of the poem. And now quickly, we're going to look into the themes in the poem. So what themes are prominent in the poem? There are 3 key themes that I pointed out here. Well, you could read the poem once more and try to identify some themes. And when you're able to identify some of the themes, you can leave some of the comments down this video, and you can just give your comment on some of the themes you're able to find out during your personal study, and we can look into some of the themes again, or probably just look into explaining some of those themes you find out for yourself. But for the purpose of this lesson, I've just identified 3 themes. The first one is death. It was the theme of death was just all over the poem. So you could actually say that with the use of words like sunset, evening star, twilight, when it crosses the bar, when it puts out to sea, from changing from a time and place, is all about talking about death. And also using things like sunset, showing the end of something, all points out to death, him dying. And the next one is about acceptance. So it talks about death, it meditated on death, but it's just not talking about death. He's looking into, or the poem basically shows or makes us see the acceptance, him accepting death. When he says in stanza 2 that it's more like being in a long sleep. So he intends or naturally sees death as like a natural thing, something that should come naturally, with ease, without panic, because whether you want it or not, it's still gonna come, So the acceptance of death is saying the poet appears to find a kind of peace in the thought of dying rather than being scared of death. The poem presents it as a mere transition into another kind of life. So this literally shows that he accepts, is trying to accept that death as a mere transition, and the natural process that will eventually happen. And the last theme in the poem is Christianity, because from everything I read out to you in this poem closely relates to what Christianity preaches about how when you die, the first one is about turns again home, that is telling you that he's moving from this earth to his eternal home in heaven. You see, that's like the first one. Then the second one is moving from a bone of time and place, to show that he's moving from a different space and time to another. And him saying he hopes to see his pilot, just kind of like solves everything, just letting us understand that he plans to meet God when he finally pass on to the other realm. And that is going to be all for the themes in the poem. So now we move to the poetic devices. For the purpose of this lesson, I've only identified 4 poetic devices. But like I said, for the themes, you can always, again, read the poem again. Try to digest everything I've explained. And then you can look into finding more poetic devices. These are not all. I'm just giving this 4, but I'm very sure there are more poetic devices used in this poem than these 4 I gave. So try as much as possible to, during your personal study, try as much as possible to look for more poetic devices. And again, if you want to be sure about which you decide for, you can again just leave the post for me in the comments, and we'll discuss it and talk more on it. So very quickly, the first poetic device that was in this poem is alliteration, which is the conspicuous repetition of identical initial consonant sound in successive or closely associated syllables within a group of words. So the example I gave is the first, the sunset, the S as sunset, an evening star, one clear call for me, but such a tide as moving asleep. So that's alliteration. The next one is assonance. Assonance is a resemblance in the sounds of words, in either between vowels or between the consonants. So I made sure I give you like 5 different examples. You can also look into the poem to get more example. I'm sure there are. So also look into the poem, get more example of assonance. The next one is personification. Personification is when a thing or abstraction is represented as a person. So when he said, "May there be no mourning of the bar," so it's like trying to tell us that he hopes that there's no, human beings are the only ones that mourn, when probably where something doesn't go well, or like a living thing, So him saying, liking mourning to the bar, it's like him, it justifies the personification. And the other one we say is, but such a tide as moving seems asleep. So saying the tide feels like him being asleep, and humans are the only ones who sleep, or perhaps animals. Yeah, so living things basically. So him using the tide as him saying the tide seems asleep is a clear sign of personification in this poem. And again, please try to find more examples of personification in the poem. I'm sure there are a lot more. And the last one I talk about is sibilance. And I made sure I gave you about 4 examples. I made sure I gave you 4 examples of sibilance in the poem. And basically, that is going to be all for this poem. So I'm just quickly going to run through everything I talked about in this poem. We started with reading out the poem and giving a short summary. Then we moved on to poet background. Then I summarized each stanza, and then I analyzed and explained each stanza. And I looked into the themes in the poem and gave out the poetic devices in the poem. So a quick summary of the whole poem is saying that crossing the bar is more like a meditation on death, and talking about life after death, and giving an impression that death is something that happens naturally, and you shouldn't be scared that it happened naturally, And then it's a journey. It's like a process that takes you to your eternal home and helps you meet God, who has helped you all through your journey in life and through your journey passing on to the afterlife. So basically that's what the poem Crossing the Bar is all about. I'm able to help you dissect and digest and understand what this poem is all about. Next class we'll talk about another poem that is of importance in this syllabus. Hope you have a great day. See you next time. Bye.
I hope the class was interesting. If you have questions, please drop them in the comment section or send us an email. We will love to help you further. See you in the next class.